another video called When You Draft. And this series, we're going to pick a player and talk about what type of strategies you could implement when you draft that player. And these are probably some of my more favorite videos because I don't think I have the strongest takes on which player you should take before another, but I do think there's maybe better ways to draft when you take certain players. And the player we're going to be talking about today is Ja'Marr Chase. And I think Ja'Marr Chase is an interesting player to talk about because he has other players that are going early, and there's that makes there be competition for his QB. And I think the strategies maybe changed from year to year also. If you recall, last year he was getting drafted for most of the year at the 3-4 turn, and I got very little um, Joe Burrow to go with my Ja'Marr Chase. Towards the end of the year, he started to sometimes get to the 5-6 turn, but oftentimes, again, it was the 3-4. And if you passed on him, someone took him before he got to the 5-6. And then I went back 2 years ago, so 2024, and I wanted to see what was going on in 2024 because I remember there being a strategy that I had when I drafted Ja'Marr Chase, and I wanted to see what that was. So back in 2024, Ja'Marr Chase was getting drafted at about pick number 90. And so pick number 90 is actually right where Jared Goff went in this draft. And so I had a strategy to always try to get Ja'Marr Chase even further along than pick 90 and maybe even in the hundreds if possible. What I liked to do that year was get Ja'Marr Chase, and he was, I think, going maybe like the 4-5 or something like that. And when you get Ja'Marr Chase, you when it comes back around, you let T. Higgins pass you. And when it got to the third round, if T. Higgins was still there, you take T. Higgins. And by taking T. Higgins, that kind of guaranteed that he shouldn't go before pick 90 because there weren't any players to stack with him. And if he was taken before it got back around to the third round, you knew that you had to pick him when it got to you at say pick 93 or 92, because if you let him pass there, then you knew the T. Higgins guy over here was going to get him. What did that do by having that strategy? Number one, it made sure that you didn't always pair Ja'Marr Chase with T. Higgins by going first round Ja'Marr Chase, second round T. Higgins. And you don't want all your teams to look the exact same. Also, there's definitely a cost to having so many players on the same team of that high of draft capital, where it maybe even caps your upside to a certain extent. There are benefits, so I'm not saying it's something you should never do, but there are costs. So instead of doing that, you would always, or maybe not always, but oftentimes see if you could push them around the turn. And if you didn't, whatever, you didn't want both of them every time. And if you did, you got T. Higgins at a value, and you were opening yourself up to ideally get Joe Burrow at a value as well, trying to supersize your team. So that's the strategy for 2024. 2025, the strategy was if you get both of them over here, you kind of cross your fingers and hope that Joe Burrow makes it to the 5. And it didn't work oftentimes. So which meant you had 2 of the wide receivers and none of the quarterbacks, which is okay. Some people say the quarterback's the least important person in the stack. And probably something to live by because you don't want to overdraft players. We know what that's going to look like when you see a team that has overdrafted their quarterbacks. So what is the strategy for 2026? Or is there a strategy for 2026? And when I took Ja'Marr Chase here, and I haven't taken much Ja'Marr Chase, when I took him here, I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should get Chase Brown. But then I was like, hold on, but then there's T. Higgins as well. Do I pass on Chase Brown? And then what happens if I pass on Chase Brown? Do I then take T. Higgins? And what happened in this draft in the end was that Brock Bowers fell to 22, which I think is slightly past ADP. Let's go and see if that's, for this, I think for this draft, if it's slightly past ADP, if we can. Oh, maybe we can't. There we go. Oh, that's why. Okay. It doesn't even matter, but okay, it was at ADP basically is what I ended up doing with Brock Bowers. But um, I didn't want to. What I was thinking was, I don't want to take Chase Brown here because if I take Chase Brown, then it essentially means that in this third round, I can't take T Higgins because I don't really want to go three Cincinnati Bengals to start the draft. That limits your upside when you get into the playoffs and you need bigger weeks. Remember, right now it's probably not bad for regular season. You want a team that's going to make it all the way to the playoffs, and usually good players on good teams that do great all season long are going to get you to the playoffs. That's the benefit of stacking. But once you get into the playoffs, if you're relying on too many players on one team and they're all not likely to go ballistic in the same week, you're potentially capping your upside for that big week when you're going up against more teams. For example, when we get into Best Ball Mania in week 15, you're going to be going up against 13 teams total, I believe. And then in week 16, you're going to be going up against 16 teams, 16 teams total if you include yourself. And then if you go to week 17, you're going up against hundreds or thousands of teams at that point in time. And so each week, you need to make sure you have the upside to compete. And if you cap your upside by having too many players on the same team, it's going to be hard to win it all. So you want to make sure you don't get all three of them in Chase Brown and T. Higgins. So what was my strategy as I was kind of going through? I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to take Chase Brown because if I do, then I definitely can't take T. Higgins. And I think T. Higgins is probably more the key to try to push Burrow around the corner. So I took Brock Bowers here. And then when I got to the third round, I'm like, oh man, I got the choice of either T. Higgins or George Pickens. And George Pickens was a definite ADP value here. I'm a fan of playing the ADP game because it's the knowledge of the masses, and I'm going to assume the masses are smarter than me when it comes to individual player takes. So I got George Pickens at a 4.2, ADP discount, which is a lot when you're talking about players this early on. I'm not saying that you got to do it every time, but you're not going to see George Pickens fall every time. This might be the only time I see him fall this far when I have Ja'Marr Chase. So I might as well take advantage of it to get a slightly unique combination. There might be other players, people that combination, but maybe more often than not, it's when they take Ja'Marr Chase in the first and Pickens in the second. And then they have it someone that's maybe a little less ideal in the third. Now, all these players are good players for the most part, so you could kind of say it doesn't matter. And I would agree with you as well as far as that goes. But this is probably maybe a more unique option like here. You might see other people where they get Pickens here, then Bowers falls. So, I guess I'm arguing against that a little bit. Here nor there. Okay, so pass on Chase Brown here, knowing that when I get to my third pick, Chase Brown might be there, T. Higgins might be there, maybe both of them, probably not, but I can take them to try to make sure there's less likely of a chance that Joe Burrow gets taken before he gets to me at pick 70. Now, once I took George Pickens with this third round pick, I'm like, oh, darn. Now the chances of me getting Ja'Marr Chase are that much more slim, which I think they are because you got the T. Higgins drafter right here. And, he's probably more likely to take Joe Burrow at pick 66, which is basically at his ADP, maybe even a pick or two after his ADP. And I'm here to say that if he wants to do that, let him do that. And don't worry about it. If you want to stack Chase and Higgins every once in a while, I think that makes sense. If you want to stack Chase and Brown every once in a while, I think that makes sense. If you're taking all three of them because you're scared that you won't be able to get Joe Burrow to get pushed around, I don't think that makes sense. Now, why am I not concerned if someone over here takes Joe Burrow instead of him getting pushed all the way to you. Number one, you don't want Joe Burrow on all your Ja'Marr Chase teams, but it's not bad to have him on a decent percentage of your Ja'Marr Chase teams. And so you want to give other people the opportunity to potentially take Joe Burrow sometimes. Number two, I don't think taking Joe Burrow earlier than this 6-7 turn is a fantastic pick. He was going at pick 90 2 years ago, and I thought that was a really nice pick. I think when he's going here at pick 60 something to, I got him at 75, he's just a pick. He's a good addition to your team based on what you're trying to correlate. So if he gets taken before that, good. Another team kind of weakened themselves potentially a little bit so that you could strengthen yourself with other players that are probably good picks at pick 75 instead of bad picks. Now, now that we've established that it's okay to take one or two, but probably not three Bengals early. Now let's talk about when Joe Burrow does get around to you at pick, high 60s, low 70s here. I think we need to look at the teams that are after us to see if we can push Joe Burrow around or not. What I found 2 years ago when I was trying to do this was I didn't have a good strategy for when to push Joe Burrow around versus when to take him here. Sometimes I pushed him around and then regretted it when Joe Burrow was taken. Other times I pushed him around and I'm like, okay, well, I missed him maybe, but that other team maybe regretted it taking him. So what do you want to look at? I think you want to look at, number one, what players are available to you instead of Joe Burrow. And number two, what's the likelihood that Joe Burrow gets taken around the turn? So in this case here, RJ Harvey had a huge drop all the way to pick 70. And we'll try to pull this up again to see what's his ADP here. You can see his pick ADP was 56. So not a huge fan of RJ Harvey at his ADP, but at pick 70, you're like, okay, let's again try to get unique. Let's take a player in an odd spot and let's risk pushing him through. Now, the other things that made it even easier for me to do that was, number one, the guy that did take Chase Brown had already taken a quarterback. So he probably shouldn't be taking a second quarterback at this point in time because the correlation is minimal. It's a running back. And two, that'd be a lot of capital invested in quarterback. And so that was one of the reasons why. And then if we look at the other team and you kind of see how it's being built right now, and if I scroll through, this team did some funny things with 5 QBs. But up until this point here in pick 6, it made sense what he was doing. And I didn't see anything that told me that grabbing or letting Joe Burrow go through would essentially be an insta loss here. If you see either team doing really funky things, chances are they're going to do something else funky, like grab and unstack Joe Burrow. So, for example, if this guy's got like 4 running backs or 5 running backs, or he grabs 2 tight ends or something really weird, chances are he might do another thing that's weird. But he kind of was doing something that made sense. Anchor running back, nice wide receivers, a tight end to go along with everything. Okay. Well, that tight end actually was after our Harvey pick. So anchor running back, 4 wide receivers. Seems fine. 2 running backs, and then 2 wide receivers, and then a actual pulling up Jaden Daniels for a stack. Makes sense as well. I think I can probably push Joe Burrow around the corner and get him in the 7th round, while also getting the huge fall on RJ Harvey. Let's say RJ Harvey's not there, and there's no one else that's a huge faller. Then I need to analyze, well, if I push Joe Burrow, is there something that I really, really want here? Or does it not really matter and I can live with like 5 or 6 different picks here in the 7th round? If If I don't have any strong feelings on a certain player, I probably just take Joe Burrow here, enjoy the little bit of an ADP value, and then grab whatever comes to me around the corner. So you got to do a little bit of analysis up front after you take Ja'Marr Chase, and then do a little bit of analysis here if Joe Burrow makes it to you. I do think you want to think about how to build your team as you're going through this also. You don't have all the information right now, but we do have some information that we can use to build our team. Number one, there aren't many wide receivers left to go after. There is one more Bengals wide receiver. I think it's debatable how much you should be investing in him, and he is at the very end of the draft. So if you want to save your last round bullet for one more wide receiver, I guess you could say that's okay. Also, you know that potentially there's a late round tight end and a late round running back that you could potentially take as well. And so, if as you're drafting, you need to be thinking about, if I do something like take Bowers here, I probably don't want to grab another tight end too early if I want to save one of my spots for a third tight end. With Bowers, I think it's totally fair to go and do 2 tight ends only. I know some people believe you do 3 no matter what in these 20-round drafts. And so if you're one of those people, that's okay as well. I'm not saying that there's one way to do it only, but it might make sense if you are going Bowers early and you do want to stack your Bengals to then wait until much later for your other tight ends. In this draft here, you can see that I waited until the 18th round and the 20th round for my 2 other tight ends in Helm and Gesicki. And here's that running back in Brooks, who you can sometimes get in the 20th as well. And so you could, for example, maybe even go running back, tight end, or tight end, maybe running back or something like that if you wanted to get both of them on your team. I think Gesicki's probably the more reliable pick in that he's probably got a spot on the team and Burrow likes him. Who knows what's going on with Brooks? He didn't do much last year. Did they trade for Samaje Perine in the middle of the season, I think. But I don't know what's going on this year with their team at running back. He was a sixth round draft pick or 7th round draft pick, athletic pass catcher. So it could make sense to take a stab if you're in the 19th or 20th round if you want to. But make sure you're drafting your team right. So if you do want to have a 5th, 6th, 7th running back, make sure that you're leaving a 1 spot open for Brooks. And if you do want to have Gesicki, make sure that you're drafting your team, appropriately for that as well. For example, if you go with the stud tight end early, make sure you don't invest too early in a second one. Or if you don't get a stud tight end, you can then kind of go however you want to with tight ends here. You can do kind of 2 in the middle and then Gesicki at the end. Or you could even do something fun like 4 tight ends to end the draft and have it be Gesicki as one of 4 tight ends. I think those are all options that are on the table. And I think it is a nice stack to get Gesicki with Joe Burrow. One of the reasons why I think it is a nice player to get with Joe Burrow is because Gesicki's proven he's at his best when one of the wide receivers goes down, and then Gesicki's almost got to play that second wide receiver role or second primary pass catcher role type of thing as well. And so you get to pass on Higgins, and then you get the player that takes Higgins' spot if he gets hurt. So again, you're opening up a lot of bang for your buck there, potentially, for like that one individual spike week. A couple last things to think about right now, or maybe just one last thing to think about right now, and that would be what other players maybe you want to get on your team while you're doing this. We don't have all the information, but we do know who they're more likely to play in week 17 just based on who's in their division. So you got Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. They're not the most exciting picks to draft, but they are options. So, for example, if Derrick Henry fell to you, that would be a pick. Drafting a running back that's very heavy run focused is rather unique if you did get a week 17 correlation type of thing. That being said, we did see just last year, I think Baltimore, Henry went pretty crazy to start the game. And so maybe Henry ends up with 2 or 3 early touchdowns, and it forces the Bengals to pass heavily. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it is maybe a little bit on the less likely of possibility. If Henry has a huge game, then Chase also has a huge game. You also have some Pittsburgh players and some Cleveland players that are around here in that you could grab Fannin. Not a huge fan of Fannin here. I think actually if he starts, I guess, going in the 8-9, then I think maybe Fannin makes sense. Or maybe if you take like Joe Burrow here in the 6th and Fannin's here in the 7th or something like that, maybe. You do you. You have Metcalf here, who's also an option. So you got two. So like for example, if you saw a bunch of potential bringbacks, you could go and just take Burrow here and then see if any of the bringbacks come back to you in this round here. Pittsburgh, you got Warren, you have Rico Dowdle now also. You have Michael Pittman that's going to be later on. So you have a lot of players. Jerry Judy's way later on as well. And then even like a pass catching running back like Dylan Sampson, you could get pretty late also. Let's see if I'm just thinking about someone like Dylan Sampson right now. Let's see if I kind of messed that one up. So Dylan Sampson in this draft went here in the 16th round. So I didn't miss out on it. But if he did make it over here, it would make sense to take someone like a Dylan Sampson instead of a Singleton potentially. That being said, Singleton might end up getting drafted by the Bengals or something like that. That'd be a rather exciting pick to get with the Bengals for a team like this. Brown didn't have extremely high draft capital, and there were rumors even last year that he might get replaced or lose a lot of his workload. He survived the draft, and he had a great second half of the season, but the first half of the season wasn't that great. So who knows what's going to happen in the draft? Weird things happen. So there you go. Don't stack up too many Cincinnati Bengals together that are early on in the draft. Think about if you want to target some of these late round Cincinnati Bengals, what you should be doing earlier on to get those players. And then be aware that there's plenty of opportunities to do some sort of bringbacks for division opponents. And then last but not least, be okay with losing Burrow because he's not a value or probably not a value or too early on. And you want other people to lose value while they then give you players of maybe even better value later on in the 6th and then early in the 7th. Let me know what you think. Let me know what I missed. Let me know if you disagree. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.